Welcome, take a slow breath in and let it go. Allow the hum of modernity to soften, just for a while. The flicker of screens, the tempo of your day, let them gently fade. Tonight we'll walk a very different path. One paved in stone, worn smooth by centuries of silent footsteps. Imagine yourself stepping into a distant time, into a world enclosed, not by noise, but by prayer, where time is measured not by clocks, but by psalms, where daily life is governed by the rising of the sun and the rustle of a monk's robes in the corridor. We are entering the world of the Byzantine monastery, a place where time moves differently, where solitude is not loneliness, but devotion, where the light comes not from lamps, but from flickering candles and sunrise filtering through stained glass. This is not a world of politics, conquest, or courts, though those things existed just beyond its walls. This is the world of ink-stained fingers, of pages turned slowly, of chants echoing across marble chambers. It may seem distant, even alien, but if you listen closely, you may find within this world something quiet and comforting, something still, in contrast to the rush of your own life. Let us begin, then, at the start of a monastic day, before the bells, before the sun, before even your thoughts have fully woken. Imagine the cold, not harsh or biting, but a clean stone chill that clings to your woolen robe as you wake. There is no alarm, no spoken call, only the soft knock on the wood of your door. 3 taps, the signal. It is still dark outside, the kind of deep, velvety dark that seems to absorb sound. You rise. You dress without haste. There is no mirror, no urgency, only the rhythm of your breath, the rustle of linen, the hush of bare feet on ancient flagstones. This is the hour called orthros, the morning prayer. It begins well before the first light. You walk slowly down the cloister. The air is cold but dry, tinged with the scent of old stone and melted wax. Your fingers brush the rough walls as you pass, and ahead the faintest golden glow spills from the chapel doorway. Inside, the brothers are gathering. There is no chatter, no greetings, only the clearing of throats, the creak of wooden pews, and the slow unison of breath preparing to chant. The service begins not with grandeur, but with quiet harmony. A single voice begins, "Glory to you, O God, glory to you." Then another joins, and another, until the stone walls hum gently with the blend of voices, low, resonant, and unhurried. This is not performance. It is not meant for you. It is an offering given to the silence itself. You may feel the strangeness of it, the stillness, but also the simplicity. There is no judgment here, only repetition. Psalm after psalm, line after line. The words have been sung like this for centuries, by others whose names are long forgotten. And when the service ends, there is no applause, no announcement, only a bow, a crossing of oneself, and the gentle return to the cells. But not all go back to sleep. You do not. Instead, you turn toward the scriptorium, the writing room, a place almost as sacred as the chapel. The scriptorium is cold, even in summer, but the sunlight that will soon filter in, when it comes, will bring both warmth and clarity. Here, rows of desks face outward toward narrow windows. On each sits a wooden board, pots of ink, sharpened quills, and stacks of parchment. You settle into your bench. The posture matters, not stiff, not relaxed, but attentive. You open your work, a half-finished psalter in Greek minuscule. You dip your pen and begin to write. Each letter must be even. Each line must breathe, not crammed, not sloppy. This is not just writing. It is prayer through form. As you write, the world narrows to the faint scratching of quill on skin. The smell of ink, metallic, faintly sour. The feel of parchment, smooth and imperfect under your hand. Hours pass like this. Sometimes a raven calls from the courtyard. Sometimes a fellow scribe coughs or drops a pen. But mostly it is silence. The kind that grows deeper, not emptier, the longer you stay within it. By mid-morning, the light has shifted. It pools golden on the floor and dapples your work with moving shadows of ivy from outside. Your fingers ache. Your back is sore. And yet there is peace here. No decisions to make. No opinions to form. Only this letter and then the next. And the quiet satisfaction of preserving something carefully, intentionally, for the future. In this monastery, time is not rushed. Life is a repetition of prayers, writing, meals, labor, and sleep. There is no novelty, only the refinement of the ordinary. It is not an easy life, but it is a clear one. And in that clarity, there is a rare kind of stillness. As the sun reaches its highest point, you stretch your fingers. You look at the page you've written. It is not perfect, but it is faithful. And that, here, is enough. Now imagine the scent of pigment, earthy, mineral, with a faint trace of egg yolk and vinegar. It lingers in the air, mingling with the waxy breath of extinguished candles and the subtle musk of wood, aged cedar, perhaps, or cypress. You are in a different chamber now, still within the monastery, but no longer in the cold geometry of the scriptorium. This space is warmer, softer. Dust floats lazily in the shafts of sunlight falling through high windows. You can hear your own breath, and if you listen closely, the faint scratch of brush on board. This is the icon studio. The walls are bare, but stained in places with old color. A few benches, low tables, and a single upright board facing east, toward the rising sun always. And at that board stands the iconographer. He does not speak. He hasn't spoken since dawn. His vow of silence is not constant, but he observes it strictly when painting. For this work is prayer. He begins not with paint, but with stillness. Every movement, every step, is part of a slow ritual. Before he picks up the brush, he bows to the icon in progress. A figure of the Virgin, arms open, gaze steady, not yet fully formed. Her face is only a sketch, delicate graphite lines outlining a future expression. The painter prepares his colors. They are not store-bought. Each hue is hand-ground. Ochres from crushed stone, greens from malachite, blues from the precious lapis lazuli brought from far lands, perhaps even from Afghanistan, across countless hands, mixed with egg tempera, a technique older than the monastery itself. The result is a paint that dries quickly, permanently, and glows softly, not glossy, but luminous. He starts with the background, a field of gold, painstakingly applied with a gilder's brush. Thin, fragile leaves of metal, each pressed with a breath, each smoothed with a squirrel-hair tool, until it reflects the soft light like a sunrise through fog. Then, layer by layer, he builds the figure, not as a portrait. Icons are not meant to resemble a person, but to reveal the divine. The Virgin's robes are painted in deep wine red, edged with folds of blue-black shadow and ivory light. Her hands, stylized, graceful, outstretched in eternal welcome. And her face? Ah, her face. This is the painter's slowest work. He applies skin tones and transparent layers, called roskrish, each layer thinner than the last, each brushed gently into place, following invisible lines, from brow to cheek to chin, always symmetrical, always calm. You notice something strange as you watch. The faces in these icons do not smile. They do not weep. They look inward. And as you spend time with them, you feel yourself looking inward too. The painter mixes a final, pale tone, called svet. It means light. With it, he adds highlights to the cheeks, the nose, the brow, not to create realism, But to suggest illumination from within, the eyes are last. They are small and dark, framed by long stylized lines. And when they are done, they seem to look not at you, but through you, as if they've always been there. The painter breathes out. He places his brush down. And once more, he bows, not to himself, not to the viewer, but to the act of making. In the world of Byzantine icons, beauty is not decorative. It is instructional. Each figure teaches. Each gesture means something. The color of the robes, the shape of the hand, the tilt of the head, these are not art objects. They are windows into another world, and they are made not with ego, but with humility. Anonymity is preferred. You will not find a signature. The iconographer fades into the brushwork. His presence is in the reverence of his labor. Outside, the sun shifts again. It glints against the gold leaf background, sending soft reflections onto the stone floor. The painter does not stop to admire it. Instead, he turns to a small pot of varnish and begins the final step. The varnish is clear. It seals the icon, protects it from the years to come. Dust, time, breath, candle smoke, they will try to wear it down. But this layer, like a prayer, shields the image from the world. In time, this icon will be placed on the iconostasis, the great screen between the nave and the altar. There it will be kissed, blessed, wept before. And the painter, he will begin another, a saint this time, or a scene from the Gospels, or perhaps an archangel, robe swirling, gaze fixed eternally ahead. Always the same slow rhythm, always the same quiet devotion. In a world outside that rushes, breaks, forgets, here a brush moves silently across a wooden panel, and with it something ancient is preserved. Imagine yourself walking softly across worn stone floors, the soles of your sandals brushing against ancient dust. A corridor stretches before you, narrow, cool, and dim. Its walls are lined not with icons, but with shelves, low wooden shelves, some leaning, some bowed, and on them, manuscripts, rows and rows of parchment volumes, stitched by hand, inked in careful Greek, some centuries old even in their time. You are in the quiet heart of a Byzantine monastery, its library. But this is no public archive. This is a private space, a secret space known only to a few monks entrusted with its care. To the world outside, Constantinople, the grand capital of the Byzantine Empire, bustles with trade, debate, and worship. But within these hushed walls, another world is preserved, a world of words. The air smells of parchment, animal skins scraped smooth and dried, of wax used to seal letters, to fix pigments, of cedar oil rubbed into the bindings to deter insects. The light is minimal, just enough to read by. Too much sun would crack the ink. Too much warmth would call mildew. A monk sits at a wooden desk, bent, silent, absorbed. He is a copyist, one of the most trusted roles within the monastery. Before him lies a manuscript, open, illuminated, and beside it, a blank sheet of parchment. He dips a thin quill into a pot of ink, dark, rich, made from soot, water, and gallnuts. Then he begins to transcribe, letter by letter, line by line. Centuries of knowledge, passing from one page to another through his steady hand. You look over his shoulder, gently, of course, and you see a familiar name, Aristotle. The Physics, a work that was nearly lost, and yet here, carefully copied, preserved in the margins of a Byzantine monk's world. This was not uncommon. Many ancient texts, Greek philosophy, Roman law, early Christian theology, were kept alive in places like this, copied and recopied, generation after generation, even when their ideas fell out of favor. Sometimes the scribes would add glosses, little notes in the margin, a correction here, a comment there. Occasionally, even a sketch, a small hand pointing at a curious passage, or a drawing of a fish beside a verse about the sea. The books themselves varied in shape. Some were bound as codices, the early form of books as we know them. Others were scrolls, still used for formal texts, unrolled horizontally as they were read, and hidden among them were treasures, some one-of-a-kind texts copied from now lost originals, fragments of Homer, medical treatises from Galen, mathematical diagrams, delicate, geometric, drawn with compass and ink. Not every volume was grand. Many were humble, practical. Books of herbal remedies, astronomical tables, liturgical calendars, even collections of sermons meant to be read aloud, their pages stained with centuries of breath and candle smoke. And not all were in Greek. Some bore Arabic marginalia, a sign of trade or rescue or translation. Others contained Slavic scripts, Armenian notations, or the Latin of the old Western Empire, folded gently into Eastern hands. You run your finger gently, so gently, along the spine of one such book. Its leathers cracked but supple. The gold lettering on its cover faded, yet still legible. In principio erat verbum. In the beginning was the word. And yet, for all its preservation, the monastery knew that words could be fragile. Fire was the great fear. One errant flame, one fallen lamp, and centuries could vanish. So many texts had already been lost in the centuries before. To war, to decay, to neglect. The monks, knowing this, sometimes hid their rarest volumes in false-bottomed chests, in alcoves behind altars, buried beneath floorboards, wrapped in oiled cloth. Some even sealed them in walls, forgotten for centuries, until earthquakes or renovations brought them back to light. There is one such discovery that still whispers to us today. In the mid-20th century, at St. Catherine's Monastery in Sinai, scholars uncovered a hidden room behind a plastered-over wall. Inside, hundreds of ancient manuscripts, preserved in dry desert air. Many were palimpsests, older texts scraped off and written over, but still faintly visible beneath. And through modern technology, we've begun to read those erased voices, early Christian gospels, mathematical proofs, plays, medical observations, each a ghost of ink, returned to the world. One wonders how many such ghosts slumber still in the hidden libraries of Constantinople. Or, perhaps, how many were lost forever in fire. For when the Fourth Crusade came in 1204, not as liberators, but looters, they did not spare the monasteries. Churches were ransacked, altars overturned, and libraries. Many were burned. Many more were carried away. Greek knowledge, preserved by Byzantine hands, scattered across Europe, carried by scribes, scholars, monks, and sometimes thieves. And yet, despite the loss, some survived. In hidden cupboards, in forgotten chests, in the hands of those who knew that to copy a book was not just to preserve its text, but to protect its soul. Today, we read what remains. And though the parchment may crumble, though the ink may fade, the words still whisper, whispers, from a room of stone and silence, where light touched vellum and minds touched eternity. Imagine yourself standing beneath the vast dome of the Hagia Sophia. It is morning, but within these walls, sunlight is filtered through high windows and a gentle haze of incense. The marble floor beneath your feet feels cool. Its veins shimmer faintly, polished smooth by generations of worshippers. Above, mosaics of gold and glass seem to float in the air, each tiny tessera catching light like a droplet of fire. This is not merely a church. It is a statement, a cosmic proclamation in stone. And today it is filled with silence. But once it echoed with solemn chants, the shuffle of feet, and the presence, the heavy, sacred presence of the Byzantine emperor himself. The emperor enters not as a king, but as a servant of God. And yet he does not walk among the people. He is veiled in mystery. At times his face may be glimpsed behind a curtain of incense. At others his presence is suggested only by the rustle of silken robes, or the gleam of a jeweled crown in candlelight. Byzantine emperors were not merely rulers. They were seen as God's chosen representatives on earth, a living bridge between heaven and the world of men. Their prayers, then, were not private affairs. They were political acts, performances of sacred order. Within the vast space of the cathedral, he would stand apart in a raised area, the solia, close to the bema, where the clergy sang the liturgy. He did not lead the service, but his presence infused it with meaning. He might cross himself, bow deeply, receive the Eucharist with ritual reverence, and the people would watch, some craning their necks, others barely able to see, but understanding nonetheless. For if the emperor worshipped, so must the empire. The garments he wore were no less ceremonial. A deep purple robe, the color reserved for emperors, embroidered with golden thread. On his head, the stemma, a crown of golden filigree, sometimes topped with a cross. Every thread, every gem, chosen with intention, to reflect not his wealth, but his divinely sanctioned role. And at times, those garments would change. He might be robed as a monk, barefoot during Lent, or cloaked in imperial splendor during Easter, when processions filled the streets and bells rang through the city like ripples in water. But within the Hagia Sophia, all remained ordered, measured, ornate, yet still. From the galleries above, cloistered nuns might watch the ceremonies. Below, senators and generals stood in respectful silence. The patriarch, highest churchman in the empire, would offer prayers, incense, and sacred readings. But always, the emperor was central. In these services, we see the core of Byzantine theocracy. Church and state were not separate, but entwined like gold leaf and paint on a manuscript page. This blending was not merely symbolic. The emperor had influence over theological disputes, the appointment of bishops, and even the outcomes of church councils. At times, his word held the weight of doctrine, and yet many emperors took this role seriously, not just as political theater, but as a personal burden. They prayed, fasted, commissioned monasteries, funded hospitals, and debated the nature of Christ with scholars and mystics. Consider Emperor Justinian I, who reigned during the 6th century and ordered the construction of the Hagia Sophia itself. He saw it not only as an architectural wonder, but as an offering to God. When it was completed, legend says he stood beneath its dome and whispered, "Solomon, I have surpassed you, not in arrogance, but in awe." Or Basil II, the Bulgar slayer, whose military campaigns were fierce, but who lived simply, died without children, and left his vast fortune to the church. He was buried not in a golden tomb, but in a plain sarcophagus near the gates of Constantinople, where passing soldiers might remember him. There were also darker moments. Emperors who fought over icons, who clashed with the church, who used religion to justify violence. But even in these moments, the rituals continued. The golden mosaics above the altar, Christ Pantocrator, calm and all-seeing, remained. The candles were lit. The psalms were sung. Through war, plague, and political turmoil, the empire maintained its sacred choreography, a rhythm of divine service, imperial reverence, and quiet ceremony. And outside the great church, in smaller chapels, in monastic cells, in household shrines, the image of the emperor, praying, was echoed, painted on walls, woven into tapestries, carved into ivory diptychs, always standing between heaven and earth, a mediator, a mirror. Today, we look upon these mosaics. The gold has faded slightly. The names are unfamiliar, but the serenity remains. The emperor, frozen in prayer, eyes uplifted. still worships beneath a timeless dome. And you, for a moment, stand beside him. And now, let the sounds begin to fade. The quiet murmurs of monks, the rustle of linen robes, the flicker of torches against ancient stone, all soften into stillness. You have wandered far, from the cold floors of a monastic cell before dawn, to the patient hands of an icon painter who spoke only through color and brushstroke, to libraries where centuries of memory were hidden between dusty pages, and finally to the glittering silence beneath domes where emperors once stood in awe. Each step brought you deeper, not into spectacle or noise, but into a world shaped by stillness, repetition, and sacred intention. In the Byzantine world, time flowed not in chaos, but in rhythm. The same prayers chanted, the same paths swept, the same candles lit, day after day, season after season. A comforting monotony, a spiritual cadence, a life of purpose, not performance. And now, as your mind rests in that same rhythm, consider how much was built not with armies or gold, but with patience. How much was preserved not through glory, but through quiet dedication. The monk copying a manuscript by lamplight, the novice rising before dawn to sweep the stones, the painter laying gold leaf with trembling care, the emperor bowing not before men, but before God. The world has changed. The walls have crumbled, the names forgotten, but the silence remains, and it welcomes you now. Let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts float like incense in a vaulted dome. And if sleep comes, let it come like a monk's chant in the dark, soft, measured, endless. Thank you for listening, and good night.